This conference will now be recorded.
So in the previous sessions, we have discussed about the JSON format, and we have discussed what exactly the JSON format, how it looks like, what are the various principles or the rules that we need to follow upon preparing the JSON format, and the syntax of the JSON format, and the various data types supported by the JSON format, and how to prepare the JSON format through manually, through programming. Both we have discussed by using the JSON generator class. Suppose if the third-party system is providing the JSON format of response to you, then how can we parse this content? How to convert that JSON content into our own objects types? We have discussed practically by using JSON parser classes also. Now, so now today we'll see how can we integrate with the third-party systems. Okay, how can we integrate with the third-party systems? Now let's see practically. How can we invoke the third-party web services? How can we get the response? And how can we represent that response on our Visual Force pages? We'll see practically. For example, assume that I have an application. Which is a Postal PIncode application. Postal PIncode application. So which has been developed by the Postal Department of India by having their own technical team. So these people has built an application which is used to get the details of the various postal department branches based on the city name, based on the zip code also. So whenever I'm passing a city name, like as from Hyderabad, a specific area, in that area, okay, what are the various postal department branches are available, how many branches are available, their details and everything they will be returning to you. We can get all this information. So for that reason, they have built an application called as Postal PIncode application. So now inside this application, they have implemented a web service. Okay, they have prepared a web service. So there is a web service is available here. There is a web service. So now this web service is going to be collecting the city name as input. Okay. Now this web service is going to be collecting the city name or the pin code as input, and then based on that pin code, based on that city name, whatever the branches are available in that area, all the branches information will provide to you. This is the functionality of web service. Now, simply you can raise a question. Sir, what do you mean by a web service first? Web service is also like as a method. Okay, web service is also like as a method. Now, so now whatever the way we are creating some methods inside the class, like for example, we are having some classes. Public class, like some accounts helper. I'm having a method, public void get accounts. There is a method. Inside this, it is having some business logic. write the business logic to get all the account records available inside my object. And we can prepare one more method also. Like it will be adding one more method. If I'm passing the record ID, then it will return the record to me over here. Like for example, public void get account by ID or by name, whatever. If I'm passing the account record name string, we have to pass ACC name. There is a parameter. It's a parameterized procedure. So now it will be returning that. Here we can write the code. So which will be returning that account record over here. Based on that name, it will be returning that record. What record? Account. So return type is account. So it is returning how many records? All the records. So that will be list of account. That's it. So whenever we are going to be calling this get accounts method, then inside this method we are having some business logic. So now this business logic is going to be executing internally. It will collect all the account records available inside the account object by using an SQL query. It will store the records inside the listed collection. That listed collection will be returning to you. So whenever I'm calling this method, it returns all the account records available inside my object. In some cases, I don't want all records. I want only that record based on a specific name. Whatever the account record name that has supplied, based on that name, I want only that particular record, not all. So at that time, I'm passing the account record name. Based on that, it will be returning that respective record over here. Only that account record, single account record, it returns over here. That means what? These are the normal procedures of the functions. So now which will be returning some results over here. But now these are the methods have been defined with public, which can be accessible within the organization. Okay, within the organization. If you want to access this particular method from the outside of the organization, we are making it as global. Global means what? You know, it's not new. As part of our Apex programming, in the initial classes of Apex programming, during the access specifier, I told you here. So now this is the method which I would like to access from outside of the organization also. If you want to access from outside of the organization, then we are going to be defining it as global. Global members can be accessible within the organization and from outside of the organization also. From where? From a third-party system also. Okay, from a third-party system also over here. From a third-party system. Now, so now here in this case, if you're preparing a normal method can be accessible within the organization. Global methods can be accessible from the third-party systems also. Those methods are called as web services. When coming to the web service is nothing but a procedure or a function which can be accessible from the third-party systems also. Not only within the organization, from the outside of the organization also, from the third-party systems also we can able to access. That means this is available in the web. So web service is nothing but a procedure or function which contains some business logic which can be accessible from the third-party systems also. Now, in this case, okay, now here in this case, somebody has prepared some web services with the name like as, which will be having that as part of that application, Postal PIncode application. Postal PIncode is an application which will be having a web service, okay, which will be having a web service. So now this web service will be receiving the input values. Okay, this web service will be receiving the input values, and then based on that input values, it will be returning the response back. Now, so in this case, whenever if somebody has prepared the web services, okay, somebody has prepared the web services, then how can we invoke? Okay, how can we invoke? Now, let me explain practically. So now this is the Postal PIncode application which has been developed by the Postal Department people. For example, this has been developed by using some Java program. This has been developed by using some Java program. It has been built by using Java program. Now, so I'm having my Salesforce application. I'm having my Salesforce application. So this is my Salesforce application. So this is my Salesforce application. Now what this Salesforce application will do is, now from my Salesforce application, I would like to invoke this web service. Okay, I would like to invoke this web service. So I want to make a request to this web service, and then from that one, I would like to get the response back. Okay, I would like to get the response back. So now whenever we are going to be invoking, whenever Salesforce is invoking the third-party web services, whenever Salesforce is invoking the third-party web services, nothing but request is going to outside, then it is called as call out feature. Okay, then it is called as call out feature. Call out means what? We are invoking the third-party web services. The call is going to outside, nothing but from Salesforce, we are making a call. Like for example, assume that, assume that we have two people, myself and then another person is like some Sudhir. Assume that we both are friends. Sudhir and myself is both are friends. Now today I want to make a call to Sudhir. So I'm having his contact number. In my mobile, I have dialed his number. So now whenever I'm making a call to him, for me, what is that call? That is outgoing. Because from my mobile, I'm going to be connecting to that Sudhir's mobile in order to have some conversation. That means call is going to outside. That is called as outgoing. Okay, assume that myself is some Salesforce. So there is nothing but Postal PIncode application. So I am making a call to invoke that web service. So this is call out feature. Call out means what? Whenever Salesforce is invoking the third-party web services, then it is called as call out. Now, suppose if it is the reverse process. Okay, if it is a reverse process, suppose somebody is invoking your web service, then it is called as call in. Like as other person is calling you on your mobile number, then it is called as what? Incoming call. Okay, that is incoming call for me because somebody is calling me. Like the similar way, if the third-party applications are invoking your web service, then it is called as call in. That means call is coming into your Salesforce application. So whenever we are using these web services, we have two ways: call out, call in. Call out means what? We can invoke the third-party web services. Call in means what? Somebody, nothing but third-party applications like as Java application, .NET application, mainframe application, other applications are invoking your web service. Okay, other applications are invoking your web services. So at that time, if you are invoking the third-party web services, then it is called as call out. If the third-party application is invoking your web service, then it is called as call-in service. Now, as part of this integration, we'll see both. How can we implement the call-out feature? How to implement the call-in feature, both. So first we'll go with that call-out. That means how can we invoke the third-party web services and how can we get the response? How can we parse it? How can we represent inside our application? We'll see practically in this case. Now, so now here in this case, here in this case, how can we implement the callout features? Now let's say practically. Callout means what? Whenever Salesforce application is invoking the third-party web service, then it is called as callout. Then how can we invoke the third-party web services? We have to make a request and we have to get the response back. Then how can we implement this functionality? So for that one, in order to invoke the third-party web services, to make a request and to invoke that service and to get the response back, we are going to be using the three classes here. Okay, we are using three classes which has been given by Salesforce by default. So what are those three classes? Now let me explain. In order to invoke the third-party web services, we are using the three classes which have been given by Salesforce. First one is HTTP class. Second one is HTTP request class. Third one is HTTP response class. Okay, HTTP response class. These are the three ready-made classes which has been given by Salesforce by default. Okay, these are the three ready-made classes has been given by Salesforce by default. So by using these HTTP related classes, we can invoke the third-party web services also. So this is a common question in every interview. So now have you worked on integration or not? Yes. So now then they will raise a question. So now how you did the integration? That means you have invoked the third-party web services, simply you are consuming, or you are going to be exposing your web services over. So now here in this case, you can raise a question here. We can able to explain that we have worked on both. That means call in, call out, both we have implemented here. Then how to do that here? For that one, we are using the three classes: HTTP, HTTP request class, HTTP response class. In order to have the integration with the third-party systems, to invoke the third-party web services, we are using the three classes simply: HTTP class, HTTP request class, HTTP response class. Now, so in this case, what exactly the HTTP class, HTTP request, HTTP response class, what are the various methods available inside that, and how can we use these methods in order to invoke the third-party web services? Okay, now let's see each and every class first. HTTP class, HTTP request, HTTP response. These three are the ready-made classes which are having some ready-made methods inside this. Okay, now let's see each and every class and their methods. Then we'll see how to integrate with the third-party systems. We'll see practically now. So let's go with that HTTP class. Now, so now when coming to the HTTP class, the main responsibility is HTTP class is going to be invoking that request. Okay, invoking that request. In order to invoke the request to the third-party web service, whatever the functionalities are required, that whole functionalities are available inside this HTTP class. Along with that, it will be getting the response also. Okay, to invoke the request to get the response from the third-party system, whatever the methods or whatever the functionalities are required, all are available inside this HTTP class. HTTP class contains HTTP request and the HTTP response both internally over here. That means it is having the capability to invoke the request. It will be having the capability to get the response back. Now, so that to invoke the request and to get the response, we are going to be using this HTTP class. Now, in this case, you can raise a question, sir, why this HTTP request class? Why this HTTP response class? Now, in this case, upon making a request, if we need to pass some input parameters, how can we pass? If it requires some input parameters, how can we pass? If it requires some authorization code, then how can we supply? So in this case here, in order to prepare the request with the required input parameters, we are using this HTTP request class. HTTP request class is used to just to prepare the request. That's it. That means if you want to invoke the third-party system, whatever the request is required, nothing but what is the third-party system web service, and then what is the endpoint URL, nothing but what is the URL to invoke this web service over here. What input parameters are required over here, what authorization codes are required, everything we need to prepare by using this HTTP request class. This is just to prepare that request here. That request we can initiate by using this HTTP class. Okay, to prepare simply the request, we are using this HTTP request class, and to initiate nothing but to invoke that request, we are using HTTP response class. Now, let me explain that. When you go to this HTTP class, so I use the HTTP class to initiate the HTTP request and to get the response over here. Now, so my HTTP is a class which is ready-made class which is used to initiate the request. Nothing but whatever the request you have prepared, that request we can initiate and then we can able to get the response back. For that reason, HTTP class providing two methods over here. Okay, HTTP class providing two methods. In order to initiate that request, to send that request, to invoke that request, we are using a method called as send method. Okay, send method. The first method is send method, which is used to send the HTTP request. In order to send a HTTP request to the third-party system, because we are going to be invoking the third-party system over the HTTP protocol. Okay, over the HTTP protocol, we are going to be invoking the third-party systems, and we can able to initiate the request. We can get the response back. So that in order to initiate that request, we are using a method called a send method. This send method will send the request to the third-party system based on the input parameters which are specified inside this HTTP request class. Okay. Now, this method will send the HTTP request to the specified endpoint, nothing but to the web service, and then return the HTTP response back. That means it will be collecting the response back. Now, the second method is toString method. So whatever the request HTTP class that we have prepared, we can able to prepare that request in the form of a string parameter over here. In order to store that in the form of a string to represent on the debug log file, we are using this toString method. These are the two methods are available: send a method and then toString method. So HTTP class main responsibility is in order to initiate the request to the third-party systems so that we can able to invoke that request and we can collect the response back. For that one, we are using a method called as send method. Send method is going to be invoking the request, it will be collecting the response back. Now, so in this case, how can we call these methods over here? Okay, how can we call these methods? So for that reason, we have to create the object of this HTTP class. We have to create the object of this HTTP class. So we have to create the object of the HTTP class. HTTP, so I would like to specify HTTP object equals to new HTTP. Create the object of this class. In that one, we are having that method is available. HTTP object dot send. Send method is going to be initiating the request. You can specify the request. Which request HTTP request object we can able to pass. Okay, HTTP request object we can able to pass. So that in order to invoke that request to get the response, we are using this HTTP class. Now, so now here in this case, what request we need to specify? To whom you would like to invoke? To whom we would like to invoke over here? Like for example, whenever we are going to be making a call to the person, we are passing some mobile number, right? To whom you are making a call. So you have to specify the mobile number. Like the similar way, whenever we are going to be invoking a web service, which web service you would like to invoke over here? Okay, which web service you would like to invoke? Every web service will be having some path. Every web service will be having a URL that is called as endpoint URL. Okay, these are which is having endpoint URL. Every web service is available having a endpoint URL. This is also called as endpoint, which is having an endpoint. Endpoint means URL. Okay, URL by using which we can able to invoke this web service. Now, each and every web service will be having a URL, nothing but endpoint. So now we need to specify the endpoint, nothing but which web service you would like to invoke. What is the path of that web service? What is the URL of that web service we need to invoke there? We have to specify. Where we can specify this one? In this case, we are using the help of HTTP request class. HTTP request class. So what is the use of this HTTP request class? HTTP request class is used to prepare a HTTP request which we can able to initiate to, okay, which we can initiate to invoke a particular web service. This is used to prepare a class request. Used to prepare a HTTP request to invoke the specified web service. Web service based on the endpoint URL. Based on the endpoint. Endpoint means URL, path of that web service. Okay, just the terminology difference. Whenever we are going to be invoking the third-party web service, if the web service is expecting some input parameters, then we need to pass the parameters also. Okay, so now we can pass the required parameters. We can pass the required parameters to the web service in the form of the request body. In the form of request body, we can able to pass the input parameters also. If the web service is expecting some input parameters, we can able to pass those values also.
Sir, in HTTP also we are doing the same thing, right?
Now, in this case, simply we are passing the complete object. Whatever the request we have prepared, this complete request object we are passing inside the send method. That's it. It is not having all the details. Okay.
Yes.
No. So now in this case, we are preparing the request. Once the request has been getting prepared, then we are going to be invoking this request over here. Like for example, let me explain simple concept. You know that SOQL query concept. Okay, SOQL query. So as part of SOQL queries, we have two types: static, dynamic. You know, I'm preparing a query here. String accounts query. Okay, accounts query. I'm specifying that request. Select ID, name, rating, industry from account. Now tell me, will this request be invoking automatically? No, right? Because this is a string variable. Okay, this is a string variable. This is the string variable, okay, which we have, which is having that SOQL query. Okay, which is having SOQL query, which I would like to invoke. So this is the string variable in which I have stored that SOQL query, which I would like to invoke. So now, once the query is available, then how can we invoke? By using database.query method. By using database.query method, we are invoking. Okay, accounts query. Now, so now this is simply the request, nothing but it is the query which I have prepared. But this query will not execute by its own. We need to invoke. How? By using database.query method. Like the similar way, we are preparing a HTTP request. And then to send that request, to initiate that request, we are using HTTP object.send method, like this. This is like a HTTP request. This is like a HTTP class. Okay, HTTP request will be simply preparing the request, but it won't invoke. To initiate that, to invoke that, we are using HTTP class. Okay, now this is the difference. Now, so in this case, how can we use this HTTP request class? HTTP request class is used to prepare a request, okay, in order to initiate that, to connect your third-party web service. So to which web service you would like to connect? What is the path of that web service? What input parameters are required? What is that method type? So now what is the timeout option we can specify? And what is the method body? That means if the web service is expecting any input parameters, then what input parameters are required? All these parameters we can specify also. If it is expecting any authorization codes, then what authorization codes we need to supply? Everything we can able to specify inside that HTTP request class. So HTTP request class is used to prepare a request, okay, which we can initiate depends upon our application requirement. Now, so how can we prepare this HTTP request? What are the various methods are available? Now let's see. So now here we are having this HTTP request class. HTTP request class is used to programmatically create a HTTP request. Okay, in order to create a HTTP request programmatically, we are going to be using this HTTP request class, and which we can able to initiate the request. Either it may be the get method or the post method, put method, and the delete method. Get method is nothing but to retrieve the data. Okay, to retrieve the data, we are using get method. Post method is used to insert the records. Whenever if you want to insert, we can use that post method. If you want to update the records, we are using this put method. If you want to delete the record through the web service, we are using this delete method. So that we have to specify the method also. What is that method type? What operation it is doing? Whether it is returning the records to you, whether it is inserting the record, updating the record, deleting the record. We can able to specify the method type also, what type of method that web service is working. Now, so in this case, we have to specify. We can send the request along with the required method type. What is that method type? We can specify either get or post or put or delete. So now in this case, you can raise a question. Sir, how can we decide this one here? Whenever if you want to invoke a third-party web service, then upon giving the details of this web service, they will indicate what is that method type. They will give the method type here because that web service is not built by our own. It is a third-party web service. Upon preparing this web service itself, if you want to invoke that, they will provide the information. This is the web service URL and this is the method type. They will give the complete information. Based on that, we can able to pass these parameters. Okay, now. So now in this case, we have to specify the method type also. Now we can send the request headers also. Request header means what? If you want to pass any authorization codes, like as passwords, or if you want to pass any access tokens, which is the authorization code, in order to authorize that request. For that one, we are going to be using this HTTP request class. That means upon invoking that request, whatever the request parameters are required, like as authorization codes, input parameters, timeout options, endpoint URLs, everything we can able to specify inside that. So that we can specify the authorization codes also by using this request headers. Now we can set the connection timeouts also, nothing but how much time it has to be tried. Whenever we are connecting to the third-party web service, then how much time it has to try. Because if the web service is down, if the web service is not available, if the web service is in busy, at that time, how much time do I need to keep on trying to connect to the web service? We can specify that. The maximum timeout will be 10 minutes, not more than that. But we can specify the timeout also. Please try for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 1000 seconds, like that we can indicate. Depends upon your requirement here. Now, so we can send the content to that endpoint in the form of message body. That means if the web service is expecting any input parameters, then we need to pass that. Okay, then we need to pass that input parameters also. So that's what I have given this information. HTTP request class is used to prepare a request. Okay, to prepare a request. In that request, we can specify what input parameters are required, what authorization codes are required, what is the timeout option, what is the endpoint URL. Everything we can able to specify inside this. To invoke that web service, whatever the required parameters are there, all the parameters we can able to supply by using this HTTP request class. Then what are the various methods are available inside this HTTP request class? Now let's see. These are the various methods. HTTP request class is having the various methods like set method. Set method is used to indicate what type of method is we need to use to invoke that web service. Now, whenever we are going to any web service, third-party web service, they will be clearly indicating that. Now, let me explain. Suppose if you want to go to that, the web service, Postal PIncode, they will be indicating that what is the URL. So now they're clearly indicating that. Okay, Postal PIncode, okay, API allows developers to get the details of post office branches by searching based on the postal PIncode or post office branch name. Then what is that web service here? This is a web service URL. Okay, this is the web service URL. Here we have to pass the PIncode. What is the method type? This is a get. They're clearly indicating that. So now the URL, this is the path of this web service, and then this is the input parameter we need to pass. This is the method type over here. Based on that pin code, it is returning the response back to you. That means whatever the branches are available, based on that, the pin code, it will be returning all the branches information, and we can able to get the response. That response we can able to represent on your result post also. That facilities are available.
Feroz?
Now, so in this case, they're clearly indicating that. So this is the web service URL. That means the path. And then in order to invoke this web service, we have to pass some input parameter. That means we have to pass the pin code. This is the pin. We have to specify the pin code, and then this method is of type get. Nothing but whenever we are going to be invoking this particular web service based on this URL by passing the pin code, based on this pin code, whatever the postal department branches are available, all the branches information it will return. So we have to get those branches information. So this is of type a get method. Okay, get method. So in order to specify this information, we are using the various methods. The first one is set method. Set method. This method is used to indicate what is that method type. Okay, what is that method type? You can specify the method. Set endpoint. Endpoint means what? What is the web service URL? Okay, what is the path of that web service? What is the web service? The resource name of the URL. That is also called as endpoint. Endpoint means URL of that web service which you are going to be invoking. And then set a body. That means what? If you want to pass any input parameters, okay, to that web service, we can able to pass input parameters in the form of a request body. That is called as set a body. In this set a body, we can specify the request parameters also. And the client certificate name. Whenever we are going to be invoking the third-party web services, which is expecting a client certificate, which is for the encryption and the decryption mechanisms. At that time, we have to pass the client certificate name also. And then we can specify the set timeout also. Okay. In order to indicate the timeout option, we are going to be using this set timeout. So now in this case here, we can able to specify that. So we can able to specify the timeout option inside this. Okay, we can able to specify the timeout in order to indicate how much time it has to be tried to connect to that web service, because the web service server may be busy, that may be unavailable, or that may be down, the server may be down. In this case, we can able to indicate how much time it has to try to connect to that web service over there. So that we are going to be indicating that set timeout, that time we have to specify in the form of seconds. Okay, in the form of seconds, we have to specify that timeout option over there. Now, the set header. Set header is used to indicate the authorization codes. Whenever if you want to pass that authorization codes, we are using this set header method where we can specify the key and the value also. We'll see how to pass the authorization codes. We'll see as part of OAuth authentication. By using this OAuth authentication, how can we invoke the third-party web services? We'll see there. How can we pass that required parameters? We'll see practically over there. Now, so now here in this case, now the next one is the set compressed. That means whatever the request you are initiating, whatever the complete request you are initiating, if you want to send the request in the form of the compressed format, so that it can occupy very less memory, okay, upon traversing over the network, so that we can reduce the network traffic also. At that time, we can able to pass the request in the form of this compressed format by using set compressed method. So these are the various methods are available as part of this HTTP request class. So HTTP request class is used to specify the request details. What request? Nothing but which web service you are going to invoke, and what is the method type, and what is the body. Nothing but what parameters you are supplying over here. What is the timeout option that you are indicating? What authorization codes you are supplying? Whether you are passing in the form of the compressed format or not. Everything we can able to specify. So that to prepare that request, we are using this HTTP request class. Now, for example, assume that I want to prepare this HTTP request class. So this is the third-party web service that we have. This is the third-party web service. I would like to prepare this request over here. How can we prepare? Now let me explain. So in this case, we are indicating this, the syntax. Okay, I'm giving that example over here. HTTP request we can specify the object name. Object name equals to new HTTP request. Create the object and we can access that method over here. Okay, we can create the object of this class. We can access each and every method. So these are the various methods we have discussed. Set a method, set endpoint, set a body, set a client certificate name, set timeout, set header, set compress. These are all the ready-made methods of HTTP request class, which are instance methods, which requires the object of your class. So we have to create the object of the class. Through this object only we can access this methods. Like for example, let me explain. I'm creating the request. HTTP request, I would like to indicate that postal request. I'm giving the object name as postal request equals to new HTTP request. I'm creating the object of this class. Whenever we are going to be invoking this request, we have to specify that URL, right? That means which web service you are invoking. So now this is the web service which I would like to invoke. What is this particular web service URL? This is the URL over here. Here we have to specify. How can we specify? For this one, we are having a method called as, that is, okay, set endpoint. In this endpoint, we have to specify the path of this web service. This is the web service which I would like to invoke. Here we have to specify the path of this web service. Here we can pass the pin code number. So now if you want to get the details of the postal pin code some 500038, we can give your pin code number over here. Based on the pin code number, it is going to be collecting this information. Okay, it is collecting the information. So we can specify that endpoint. This is the endpoint to which I would like to connect. This is the web service name. What is the method type? We can specify postal request dot set method. So what is the method over here? This is a get method. So simply we can specify this is a get method. Okay, this is a get method. So remaining things are not required. Suppose if it requires any authorization codes, they will be clearly indicating that, boss, these are all the authorization codes you have to supply. But they haven't mentioned anything, so that it doesn't require any authorization code. Directly we can able to invoke this web service also over here. Okay, this is the endpoint URL and this is the method. Now we can specify the timeout also. It's optional. Postal request dot, okay, set timeout. Okay, set timeout. I'm going to be indicating that now 10,000 milliseconds. Nothing but 10 seconds. Please try. So this value should be between 1 to 1,20,000 milliseconds. Okay. So now, in this case, what happened? 120 seconds. Okay, 120 seconds over here. So now, because here 1,000 milliseconds means 1 second. Okay, 1,000 millisecond means 1 second over here. So that it will be expecting that how many milliseconds maximum time period? The maximum time period will be 1,20,000 milliseconds. The value should be between, okay, 1 millisecond to 1,20,000 milliseconds. Now, so when you do the calculation, it will be giving that 120 seconds. 120 seconds means what? 2 minutes. Okay, 120 seconds means 2 minutes. So maximum of 2 minutes we can able to specify inside this. So within that 2 minutes, it has to try to connect to that web service. If the web service is unable to connect, it is indicating that unable to connect to the web service. Okay, so that we can able to specify. So now once the request is ready, we have prepared the request, but we haven't sent the request over here. In order to send the request, what we need to do, we are going to be using HTTP class object. But what it will do, it is going to be returning the response. Okay, it is returning the response over here. How can we collect that response? In order to store the response, because whenever I'm invoking this particular web service will be collecting all the postal branch details based on this pin code number. It will collect all the details, it will be returning the response value. How can we capture that response here? For that one, we are using a class called as HTTP response class. We are using the help of a class called as HTTP response class. What is the use of this HTTP response class? HTTP response class is used to collect the response. Upon invoking the third-party web service, whatever the response written by that web service, to collect that response, we are going to be using this HTTP response class object. So we have to create the object of this HTTP response class, and then we can able to collect that response information, and we can able to pass that information. We can show inside your application wherever you want. Or if you want to store inside the database, we can store in the database also wherever you want, inside any object also. Now, in this case, how can we use this HTTP response class, and then what are the various methods are available? Now let's see. HTTP response class. So now whenever we are going to be invoking the third-party web service, the web service will be giving some response back to you. Okay, it is giving some response back to you. So at that time, to collect that response information, we are using the help of HTTP response object. So use the HTTP response class to handle the HTTP response written by HTTP class, nothing but that web service. So we can get the content in the form of response body. That means here, so now whatever the response is returning by the third-party web service, we can collect that response in the form of the body. That means in that response, we will be having the body part. In that body part, you will be having the actual response is available. We can collect that response also. We can set the response header if needed. So what do you mean by this response header? Suppose if you want to get that response in the form of JSON, we can inform to that. Okay, we can inform to the third-party system, boss, please give me the response in the form of JSON only. Because here I would like to get the JSON format of content. Suppose your third-party system is giving the response in the form of XML or JSON, both are available, then to clearly indicate to that third-party system, don't provide the response to me in the form of XML, please give me in the form of JSON. So to inform to the third-party system to give the response in the form of the JSON or XML, we are using this response header. And along with that, we can get the status code also. Okay, along with that, we can get the status code also. What is the status code of that response? Whether the status is successful, status is failed, or what? Everything we can able to collect that status codes also. Now, so whenever we are collecting the response which has been written by the web service, we are using the help of a class called as HTTP response class. Then what are the various methods are available? Now let's see. As part of this HTTP response class, we are having get body method. Get body method is used to collect the response body. That means what response has been written by this web service. So to collect that response, we are using this get body method, and then we can able to collect the status by using get status. Whether that is success or failure. In order to get the status, we are using this get status method. And suppose if this is failed, it will be having some response code. Why it has been failed? Because it may be having so many reasons. Whatever the web service URL that you have given, that may be invalid. Whatever the input parameters you are passing, that may be invalid parameters. Whatever the time that you have specified, then it is taking more time to connect to that. It may be having so many reasons. So at that time, to collect that response, the status code, we are using this get a status code method. Okay, get a status code method. Suppose if you want to get the status information in the form of this XML format, we are using this get XML stream reader. By using this get XML stream reader method, we can able to collect the response in the form of XML format, and then we can able to parse that XML format of content by using XML parser. Okay, ready-made classes. By using the DOM classes and the DOM parsers, we can able to parse that XML content also. These are the various methods are available as part of this HTTP response class. So whenever if you want to collect that response, we are using the help of HTTP response class. Now, then how can we invoke this one? So this is the request which we have prepared over here. Because this is the request which I have prepared. Then how can we invoke this response? How can we invoke this request? How to get the response over? Now, so now here I'm going to be collecting this information. This is the HTTP request which I have invoked. This is the request we have prepared. To invoke the request, we are using this HTTP. What is that object name that you have prepared over here for the HTTP class? Let me prepare this also. HTTP like as postal HTTP equals to new HTTP class object. I would like to invoke this request. How can we invoke? So now the postal HTTP dot send. What is that request? This is the HTTP request over here, postal request. So this is the request in which all the details are available. Please send this request to the third-party system, which will be giving some response over here. How can we store the response? By storing inside that HTTP response class. HTTP response. Okay. HTTP response. Now I'm indicating postal response equals to, we can able to collect this information. So whatever the response has been written by this method of the web service, that response will be storing inside this. If you want to collect that response information, we are using HTTP postal response get body. There is a method called as get body method, which will be having the actual response information. Now this we can able to store in the form of a string, string some response. The response equals to, we can store in the form of a string, and then we can able to pass this string into your own objects that you can store inside your application very well. So it is going to be returning the response in the form of JSON format. JSON is nothing but a string, so let's store that response in the form of a string, and then we can able to display this string value on your debug log file. System.debug response is, we can able to display response. That's it. This is how we are going to be using this HTTP classes. In order to initiate the request, whatever the request details are required, all this information we are placing inside the HTTP request class. HTTP request class is used to prepare the HTTP request, which will be used to invoke a third-party web service by passing the required parameters. Once the request has been prepared, to initiate that request, we are using the help of a class called as HTTP class. In that HTTP class, we have a method called as send method. Through this send method, we are invoking this request. Once the request has been initiated, it will connect to the third-party web service. It will invoke that web service. It will be returning the response. To get that response, we are storing the response in the form of HTTP response class. And then in that response class, we are going to be collecting the response information by using get body method, and we can display variable. Suppose if it is in the form of JSON format, if you want to represent on your Visual Force page, then you can able to parse the content by using JSON parser classes, and we can show the data, we can store the data somewhere wherever you want. That facility is available. Then how can we do that? Now let's see practically in this case. Now, so then how can we implement this one? Now let's see practically in this case. Now, so whenever if you want to invoke the third-party web services, then what are the various steps we need to be followed over here? Okay. Steps to invoke the third-party web services. Whenever if you want to invoke the third-party web services, we have to follow simple steps. Okay, we have to follow the simple steps. So what are the steps needs to be get followed? Now let me explain. Step 1. As a step 1, collect the required details of that web service. Okay, get the details of the web service to be get connected, to be get invoked. That means which web service you would like to invoke. We can collect the details of that web service information over. Like what kind of details? We can collect that information like endpoint URL. We have to collect the endpoint URL. Next, collect that method type. The method name. Is it a get method, post method, put method, delete method, patch method? We'll see those methods information in the next sessions also. Third one, we can able to collect the information about the required input parameters. Required input parameters. What input parameters are required to be to be used to invoke to the web service? And the next one. authorization codes. That means what authorization codes are required in order to invoke that web service. So we have to collect all these details. Okay, we have to collect all these details. Now, so once you are collecting all this information, then as a step 2, okay, as a step 2, whatever the web service independent URL is available, okay, whatever the web service independent URL is available, that web service independent URL we have to add inside your Salesforce instance inside the remote site settings. As a step 2, we need to add the independent URL inside the Salesforce application in remote site settings option. Remote site settings option. Because here, what is this remote site settings option? Remote site settings is a place which is used to indicate to the Salesforce, this is a trusted web application, this is a trusted web service which we can connect. Because so many hacker people might be there, they will try to connect to the Salesforce to perform some illegal operation. But at that time, Salesforce is indicating a location. There is like a registry which will be indicating these are the various trusted websites, okay, which can connect to by Salesforce. Your organization can connect to this particular websites. Other websites cannot be accessible over here. Okay, now. Now, so in this case, we have to add this option inside the remote site settings. Where is the remote site settings option is available? We have to go to the setup menu. Go to the administrator menu in the left panel. Click on security controls. Click on remote site settings link. Click on add button or new remote site button. New remote site button. Specify the remote site name and a description. Specify the URL or path of remote site, and then click on save button. Why? Because is whenever we are trying to be, okay, whenever you are trying to be invoking the request, first of all, Salesforce will go to this particular remote site setting. It will verify whether this website can be connecting from Salesforce or not, whether this website is a trusted application or not. First of all, it will look into this particular remote site settings. If that web service name has been added inside this remote site settings, then only it will try to connect to that, or else it won't connect. Okay. So for that reason, here, first of all, it is looking into the remote site settings first. For that one, we have to indicate to the Salesforce, this is also one of the trusted application. Please allow me to connect. Please allow me to invoke so that we can have the application. This is the second step. Next, as a third step. And then after that, we have to write that business logic over here. Okay, and then write that business logic here. Now, connect to the third-party system or the web service by using HTTP request and HTTP response classes. And then, as a step 4, get the response written by web service and parse the content. Parse the content and represent inside the application. Represent inside the application, so that whatever the response has been returned by this web service, we have to collect the response and parse the content by using this adjacent parser classes, and then we can able to represent the response on your debugger file or Visual Force page or store in the database, whatever you want to do. These are the 4 simple steps are available. So whenever you are connecting to any third-party web service, first of all, we have to collect the endpoint URL of the web service. Upon connecting to the web service, it requires any input parameters, it requires any authorization codes, what is that method name, everything we have to collect the details. Once the details are ready to connect to the web service, then we need to add that web service URL inside the remote site settings first. Once it has been added, then we can able to write the business logic to connect to the web service by using HTTP, HTTP request, HTTP response class. And then once the response has been received, then we can able to parse the response by using JSON parser classes. Through JSON parser class, you can parse the response, which can store inside the application or object or Visual Force, wherever you want, you can display this result. These are the 4 simple steps we need to follow in order to invoke the third-party web services. Okay. So now let's see how can we connect to the third-party web service, how can we get the response back. Okay, now let me explain practically in this case. Let's take a practical use case. Now, here I would like to have an implementation. Okay, I would like to have an implementation like this. I would like to implement a functionality like this. Assume that I'm having this, the Postal PIncode application. So this is the Postal PIncode application. Postal PIncode application. Inside this Postal PIncode application, it is having a web service. So we have a web service. We have a web service which is used to collect the postal department branches information based on the PIN code. Okay, based on the PIN code, we will be collecting the branches information. Now, my requirement is I would like to have a Visual Force page. I would like to have a Visual Force page. So this is my Visual Force page. So my page name is search postal branches page. My Visual Force page name is search postal branches page. So this is my page name. Inside this page, I'm having a search functionality. Okay, I'm having a search functionality. Enter postal PIN code. Enter postal PIN code. I would like to have a text box over here. To enter the PIN code number, I'm having a text box. Beside that, I would like to have a button control. Search. Beside that, I would like to have a button control called as search. So now this is the search box that we have. Here's the search text box. Here's the search text box. Here I'm entering that enter pin code number. I'm giving some watermark. Enter pin code number. Enter pin code. So now after entering some pin code number, when you click on search button, then it has to connect to this particular web service. Okay, it has to connect to this particular web service. Okay, it has to connect to this particular web service. It's a third-party application. Then this web service is going to be collecting this pin code which I have entered. Based on the pin code, it will collect the response. Nothing but respective branches details. It is passing this information in the form of that JSON format. So I'm making a request over here. I'm making a request. It will be giving some response. It will be giving some response. Now, what are the JSON format of response which I'm going to be collecting? This response I want to convert into the tabular format. I want to represent that result in the form of a tabular format. I want to display that information inside a tabular format. In the tabular format, I want to show that. Based on that branches information, I want to collect the details. Those branches information I want to represent inside my result first page in the tabular format. So I would like to have a table. I would like to have a table. In this table, I want to represent those records. Branch name, branch type, circle, region, block, like that. I want to collect this information. I'm indicating this. Branch name, and then what are the response will be giving by this one? Branch type, and the circle, and then the district, and the division. Like that, I want to collect this information. I want to show. Along with that, I want to represent how many number of records has been written over here. Now, total results count. I would like to indicate. I want to display the count inside this particular page. This is my requirement. Okay. I would like to have a visual first page. In this visual first page, I would like to have a text box. In this text box, we have to enter any of the pin code number. Based on that pin code, okay, based on that pin code, I would like to, when I click on the search button, it has to connect to the third-party web service. It has to collect the response in the form of JSON. That JSON content I would like to parse into my own type. I want to represent the results inside my visual first page in the tabular format. Along with that, I want to show the number of records written by this particular pin code. I would like to represent that result also over there, the count of that records. How many records have been written as a result? I want to show that count value also inside this. This is what my implementation. I would like to do this. Then how can we implement? Now let's see practically in this case. Okay. I want to connect to that web service. What is that web service name? This is the web service URL. Okay, this is the path of this web service. They're clearly indicating this. This is the path of this web service where we have to pass this pin code number. And then we can specify the method as get method. We can specify the timeout. It doesn't require any authorization code, client certificates, nothing. It doesn't require. If it is required, they will be clearly indicating inside this. So whenever if you want to integrate with any third-party system, first of all, you have to go through the documentation first. What documentation they have given to connect to the third-party website. They will be clearly mentioning that to connect to this web service, these are the steps we have to follow. They will be clearly giving that inside the documentation. So we have to follow the documentation over here. Based on the documentation, we have to follow the steps and then we can implement it. Okay, this is what we have to do. They're clearly indicating that Postal PIncode API returns the response in the form of JSON format only. Okay, JSON format only. So they're purely returning the response in the form of JSON, no XML, nothing, simply JSON format only. Okay. So in this case, how can we do this one? Now let's see practically. So first of all, let me design this user interface first. Let me design this user interface. Based on this user interface, I would like to write the business logic inside this. And then we'll see how can we write the code and how can we implement this functionality. We'll see one by one. So what is this web service URL? You will be having some URLs available. What is the web service URL? This is the web service URL. Path. So now here I'm indicating. So this is the web service URL. So this is the path of this web service URL. You have to specify the pin code. So this is the web service URL. So what we need to do as a step one, follow the steps. Collect the required information. So we have collected the web service URL here. So now, in this case, endpoint URL. So this is the endpoint URL. Next method type get method. Response type is what? JSON. It is returning the response in the form of JSON format.
Feroz, how can we know that the response is coming in JSON type?
Because they're clearly indicating this one, right? So just now I have told you, they're clearly indicating response is coming in JSON format only. In the documentation, clearly they will mention over there.
Okay.
Is JSON always the default type of response?
Now that we can indicate that. Okay, that we can indicate. So you want that response in the form of JSON or XML. Why? Because this, suppose for example, if I'm taking another web service here, like for example, open weather map. So to get the weather information, we are using this. So now they're indicating that this web service is going to be returning the return. Now it is indicating that. Now access the data. They're indicating that current weather is frequently updated from based on the global data models and the data from more than 40,000 weather stations. And the response format is what? JSON, XML, HTML format. These are the three formats in which it will be sending the response to you. But in which format you want? I want in XML, or I want in JSON, I want in HTML. That's what here in this case we can indicate clearly in which format you want that response over. Okay, for that one, upon getting that response, we have to indicate. That already told you as part of this. Okay, as part of this HTTP request class also we can specify that. Header key. Upon giving the request, you can specify that. So in which format you are sending the request, in which format you want the response, so that you can specify the response header also. Okay, if requires. So here we don't want all this one because it is supporting only JSON here. Because the modern web services are purely supporting JSON formats over here.
Okay.
Okay. So now in this case, this is the first step. We did the analysis over. We have collected the required information as a step one. Now as a step two, add this endpoint URL inside the remote site settings. Add the URL inside the remote site settings. How can we add? Now let's see. Just to copy this one URL which have collected, the web service URL. We no need to pass the complete URL here. Just you can pass up to this part only here, the basic domain up to this part. No problem. We can pass the complete also. It will take up to that part only here. Now let's go to that Salesforce application. Go to the administrator menu in the left panel. Go to the security controls and expand it. We have an option called as remote site settings. There is an option called as remote site settings. Click on this remote site settings link. Remote site settings link. Then we can able to add the URL also. I'm deleting this. Already have added for previous batch. No. I'm adding this URL. Click on new remote site button. Click on new remote site. Specify the remote site name. I'm indicating that Indian Postal PIncode, Indian Postal PIncode endpoint. I'm giving in the form of a single character, single word. Remote site settings. Specify the URL. Whatever the URL you have prepared, collect this URL, placed inside this. And then description is optional. You may specify, you may not specify. Once you click on save, it is saving this. Unable to parse this URL. So now it is storing that. Up to this part, nothing but api.postalpincode.in. Up to this part only it will be collecting. That means up to the basic domain. Okay, the complete path is not required. That means what? Whenever I'm adding this web service URL inside this remote site setting, then Salesforce is going to be getting the confirmation. Salesforce can connect to this particular website also. This website can connect to Salesforce also. That means these two can communicate over there. Other web services cannot communicate. So that whatever the trusted websites are available, those trusted website names you would like to add inside the remote site settings of your Salesforce instance. Okay, now second step also we are done. Next, the third step. Step 3. Now we need to write the code. Write the code, initiate the request, and get the response. Response from the web service. And get the response from the web service. Okay, and get the response from the web service. So this is the third step. So now what needs to be done? I need to design the user interface like this. Okay, this is the user interface which I would like to prepare. Now, let's see how can we do this. I want to design this user interface first. So let me design a user interface. Apex, search Indian postal branches page. Okay, search Indian postal branches page. I'm creating a Visual Force page with this specified name. But with this name, we don't have any page right now. So I would like to create a new page with this. So click on this link to create a new page. Now design the user interface first. Design the user interface. So I would like to place the default properties. Setup equals to false. Sidebar equals to false. Show header equals to true. And the tab style. Tab style equals to recruiter object tab style. Recruiter object tab style. And I'm indicating the section header. Section header title equals to postal. Subtitle equals to postal branches. And then I'm indicating the form tag. And then I'm preparing a page block. I'm giving the title postal branches. Postal branches block. Here I'm preparing the page block section. I'm giving the title equals to search branches. Number of columns equals to 2. Elapsable equals to apex input text. I'm placing the text box. Label equals to enter postal pin code, and I'm indicating HTML placeholder. Enter pin code. I'm placing the button control. Command button value equals to search branches. So I'm placing one text box and a button control in order to initiate the request. Now, to display the response, I would like to have a separate page block. Apex page block. I'm indicating. Title equals to postal branches. I would like to indicate the count also. Okay. I want to show the results inside this. Okay. I want to show the results inside this. Now, so this is the user interface which I have designed. Here I will enter some pin code like some 500021, whatever, anything. When I click on search branches, it has to search for that branches information by connecting to the database. Sorry, by connecting to the website. For that one, we need to write some code. So after entering some pin code number, to collect this pin code number, we need to define a variable, right? So we need to write some business logic, right? Just where we can write inside a class. So I'm preparing a controller class over here. I'm preparing a controller class. So this is the controller class which I would like to prepare. Controller. I'm indicating the search Indian Postal Branch controller. Indian Postal Branches controller. So whatever the page name that I have given with the similar name, I'm going to be creating the class also. Now, my class name is Search Indian Postal Branches controller. Now, let's save this class. The class is not yet defined. I would like to create the class right now. My class has been prepared over. Here I'm preparing this variable. Public string postal branch code, nothing but postal pin code. I'm defining get and set. That means whatever the value that we have entered inside this text box, I want to collect this value, I want to store inside this way. So that I'm defining a variable. This variable I would like to map with my text box over. So now collect this. We can specify inside the text box, specify the value property. Value equals to, we can specify the variable. Okay, postal pin code. Postal pin code. So whatever the value we are entering inside my text box, please store this value inside this variable. Once the value is available inside this variable, then we can able to initiate that searching mechanism. How? By preparing the method. Public void search postal branches. Okay. Search postal branches. But here, upon writing the code inside this URL format, it won't provide any IntelliSense. If you want to get the IntelliSense, we have to go to the developer console. We can write this class from developer console also. Let me open this class in developer console. So you will get the intelligence feature also. Let me open that class. This is my class. I need to prepare the business logic over here in order to connect to the third-party web service. So I need to verify this variable first. If the postal pin code value not equals to null and the postal pin code value not equals to empty. If the variable value not equals to null and not equals to empty, then I would like to initiate that request over here. How can we initiate that request over here? So for that one, I need to write that business logic. I need to write that code. Now, I'm preparing the classes over here. So now whatever the URL is available, that URL we have to prepare. Okay, we have to prepare that URL. So now in this case, I'm preparing this URL. String endpoint URL equals to, what is the URL over here? This is the endpoint URL. This is the endpoint URL. But here we have to pass this a pin code. So now this a pin code we are collecting over here. Up to this part we are collecting over here. Plus this is the variable here in which we are having this pin code value. I'm happy because pin code we need to make it dynamic over. Okay, we can make it dynamic. Inside this code, I'm going to be specifying the URL. Okay, I'm specifying this URL inside my application. Now, I'm preparing the endpoint URL. So now here we need to prepare that, write that code, HTTP. HTTP, okay, the postal HTTP equals to new HTTP. I'm creating the object of the HTTP service. I'm preparing the HTTP request. HTTP request, postal request equals to new HTTP request. I'm preparing that object of the request class. Now, I'm passing the request parameters. Postal request dot, okay, postal request dot set endpoint, okay, set endpoint. Pass the endpoint URL. Where is that endpoint URL? This is the endpoint URL. I'm passing this. Postal request set method. What is the method type? Get. I'm indicating get. Postal request dot set timeout. I'm indicating the timeout option as some 20,000. 20,000 milliseconds. Okay, I'm indicating the set timeout option as 20,000 milliseconds. After, then we can prepare the HTTP response. HTTP response, postal response equals to, how to initiate that request by using that postal HTTP. Postal HTTP dot. Here we can pass that request. What is the request object name? Postal request. Okay, I'm going to be initiating the request. Once we have prepared the request, then initiate the request and then send the response, collect the response and store inside this. Whatever the response value is available, this response value we can able to store inside that postal response object here. From there we can represent variable by parsing that. Okay. Now my requirement is, initially what I want to do, I would like to enter some data. I would like to have a test whether I'm getting the response or not. First of all, I would like to do that. So whatever the response I'm collecting, this response I want to show on my Visual Force page. So I'm displaying a variable. Public string, now postal response. I'm defining a variable. In this variable, I would like to store that response information. How can we collect that response information? The response information, we can collect it from this postal response. Postal response dot get body. Okay, get body. So now it will be collecting that body of that response, and then we can store inside a variable over here. Postal response variable, okay, and then display this variable inside your Visual Force page. Okay, display this response in your Visual Force page.
Suppose here on top you have created postal response variable and below HTTP postal
Oh,
response. What
okay,
is the difference?
okay, see. Okay, I've given that same name again. That's what it is giving this error message. Okay, so now we can give any variable names over here. This is the response format here. This is the response object, and then whatever the JSON I have received. So now this is the response JSON over here. I want to show this JSON format of response on my Visual Force page. How can we show? Now let's see. Let me get the code over here. Display this information. Inside this page block, I would like to represent. Okay, I'm displaying this information. So I'm going to be displaying this information inside this page block over here. I want to call this method. Whenever if I'm invoking this method, then only it will be initiating this request. It will be collecting the response. Response information will be placing inside my string variable. The string variable we can see inside my page block. So that I would like to call this method. Upon click on the button control, I would like to call this method. So now we can specify action equals to specify that method. Now I would like to refresh only this part. I don't want to refresh the whole page. For that one, for this page block, I'm indicating the ID, PG block, nothing but page block. I want to refresh it. Re-render equals to PG block. That means upon click on this button control, please perform this action. Once the action has been done, please refresh only this part. Don't refresh the whole page. But please refresh this particular part only, so that I can see the response. Okay, now. So now in this is the small piece of code. This I'm displaying the whole JSON content. I'm not parsing. Parsing code we'll see now. Okay. First we'll see whether we are able to connect to the web service or not, whether it is giving the response or not. Let's display that response. Then we'll see how to parse the content. Parsing code you know already. Okay. No need to explain that. We can do that parsing code as well. Now. So now, for example, I'm indicating this. Okay, 500001. I'm indicating this response pin code. Upon click on the search branches, it has to initiate the request to the third-party web service. It has to pass this postal pin code number also. Based on the pin code, it has to collect the response. The response information it has to show to me over here. Now click on search branches. It has initiated the request. It has collected all the branches information. This is the response which we have received from the third-party web service. Okay, this is in the form of JSON. How to parse? You know that concept. Okay, parsing code we no need to explain, that you are aware of already. In the previous session, we have discussed how to parse this content over here. Now, so in this case, what we can do? We are going to be collecting this whole information. Okay, we are collecting this whole information. Suppose here I'm going to be indicating this. I'm passing the pin code 500038. Click on search branches. It will be giving the response over here. This is the response. Suppose if I'm giving the pin code number 522124. Once you click on the search branches, it is collecting the response. This is the response information it has written to me. But now if I'm showing the response in this format, the people can't understand. I want to parse this content. Okay, I want to parse this content. How can we parse this content? Now let's see practically in this case. Okay, I want to parse this content. How to parse this content? You know, previously we have discussed. Okay, in the previous example, in the previous session, how to parse this content already we have discussed. Like we have prepared one wrapper class, nothing but our own custom class. Through that custom class, we have parsed that information also. Okay, now let me do that same information over here. So let me do that here. How can we parse this information? Now let me explain practically. So this is the piece of code that we have right now. Okay, this is the piece of code. Now, once the response has been getting received, then how can we parse? Parse the JSON content and represent in the table of file. In the table of file. I would like to collect that whole information. What is the response I have received? This is the response. Let me copy this. This is the response which we have received. We are having an array type. The first one is message. Second one is status. Third one post office. There we will be having the branches. Each and every branch information is available over there. This is the second branch. Like that. We can able to collect the branches information. This is one branch information. In this branch, we are having the name, we are having the description, we are having branch type, delivery status, circle, district, division, region, block, state, country, and the pin code. This is one branch information. This is the second branch information. Like that, we can able to parse the content. Multiple branches are available. How many branches are available? Totally, it is indicating totally 15 branches are available over here. Okay, now, so in this case, how can we parse this information? Now, let me explain in this case. For that one, I would like to use our own class. Okay, our own class. Already prepared. Okay, already we have prepared our own class in order to parse this kind of content. In the previous session, we have discussed. So, what is that class? Let me open. Post office branch. Okay, so this is the class which we have prepared in the previous session. Okay, this is the class which we have prepared in the previous session. Okay, this is the class which we have prepared in the previous session in order to represent the content on your debugger inside your Visual Force page. The same class I would like to use right now also. Okay, the same class I would like to use right now also. Now let's see how can we parse. Now we have to prepare the JSON parser. System dot JSON parser. P parser. Postal parser equals to some P parser equals to, I'm indicating system dot JSON dot create. So now we have the path the JSON string. Where is the JSON string? JSON string is there inside my get body. Get body is going to return in the JSON path, JSON string. Whatever the response we have received, okay, whatever the response we have received, okay, that response I would like to collect, and from that one I'm collecting the response JSON content. That JSON content I'm going to be passing to my create parser method, which will be creating a JSON parser object. So that this is the JSON content is there, which I would like to parse by using this JSON parser class. And from here the same story, you know that while P parser that next token is not equals to null. Okay, so I'm going to be iterating this JSON parser content from starting to ending over here. Okay, from starting to ending. I would like to collect this information now. So here I'm indicating this. If I'm indicating P parser dot get current token is equals to JSON token dot field name. Because the first token is what? The first token is nothing but message. I would like to collect this one. Okay, and p parser dot get text equals to message. I would like to collect the message information. I want to show the message. System.debug response message. I would like to indicate p parser dot get text. But we have to go to the next token over here. So in this case, I'm using p parser dot next token. P parser dot next token, so that here I'm going to be collecting this information. If p parser dot get current token is equals to JSON token dot JSON token dot field name and p parser dot get text is equals to status. I would like to collect this information. System dot debug response status is, I would like to indicate p parser dot get. Next, now up if p parser dot get current token equals to JSON token dot field name and p parser dot get text is equals to. What is the next token I would like to verify? Post office. Okay, post office. Okay, post office. Then I would like to go to the next token. P parser dot next token. Here I would like to verify. I would like to verify if it is an array or not. If it is an array, I would like to combine in one shot. If p parser dot get current token is equals to JSON token dot starting of the array. Okay, starting of the. Then what I want to do, I would like to collect that whole information. Okay, I would like to collect that whole information. I want to convert into my own type over here. Then what we can do in this case? For that reason, I would like to collect the whole information. I want to convert into my own type. I want to represent that information inside my debug lab file. Then what we can do in this case? So in this case, I am going to be creating the object over here, because it will be returning that response in the form of that collection. Multiple records are available here, so that I am going to be creating a single object, post office branch. So here I am going to be preparing a list collection. Public list of post office branch, LST branches. Gettings. Why? Because this is the collection which will be having all the branches information, and then I would like to represent this branches information on my Visual Force. For that one, I'm making it as get and set. Now, I would like to convert over here. So once array has been getting started, okay, once the array is available over here, Then we need to go to the next token. Why? Because this is the starting of the array. I need to go to the next token over here, which is starting as an object. Now go to the next token. P parser dot, okay, next token. Then verify whether it is an object. If P parser dot get current token is equals to JSON token dot starting of an object. If it is the starting of an object, then we can able to collect that information. I would like to pass into my own type, post office branch. Okay, post office branch. Now I would like to specify the branch equals to. So I would like to collect this information from where by using this JSON parser over here. So for that one we are using P parser dot read value as. Okay, read value as. Nothing but it will be collecting only that particular part, not the complete information. It will be collecting the read value as. Into which format here? Whatever the read value. Value means what? Only one particular object here. Only one particular object. We are collecting only one particular object, and this object I'm going to be reading here. Please convert this value in the form of postal. This is the class post office branch class type. Post office branch dot class, and then it will be treating this value in the form of an object. We have to convert into my post office branch type by using explicit typecasting. I'm storing inside this variable. So I'm collecting that. So now I'm collecting that. Then it's a next object by using this read value as. Nothing but whatever the next value, that means next object, please read that value, convert into my own type. This is the post office branch type, and then but it will be treating this value as the string, sorry, object. I want to convert into my own type. I'm storing inside this. Once the value is available, add this branch value to your collection. So what is that collection that we have? This is the collection. Okay, LST branches. I'm creating the object for it. LST branches equals to new list of post office branches. Okay, I'm creating the object of this one. Inside this collection, I'm adding that element here. Each and every element I'm adding over. But here we have to use that while loop again. Okay, here we have to use while loop again over here. When instead of using this one, we have to use that. Okay, while. Because here we are having so many objects are available. So now please iterate till it is starting, it will be having up to the starting of the object. And then add this element to the collection. LST branches dot add of branch. And then go to the next token. Once element has been getting added, then go to the next token. P parser dot. Okay, so now here what we did, so we are going to be collecting this each and every element inside this JSON content. If it is if the token is of type message, collect the value. If the token is of type status, and then collect the value. And then we are going to that next token over here. That is a post office. So this is the next token, post office. I'm going to that. I'm verifying whether it is an array or not. If it is an array over here, starting of an array. And then I'm moving the cursor to the next object, next token. I'm verifying whether it is an object of the starting of the object. If it is a starting of that object, I'm collecting this entire information from that object here. I'm going to be converting into my own. And then once it is done, I would like to pass the next object over here. We have some more objects are also available. So I'm moving the cursor to the next line. This process will be keep on repeating till it is going to be reaching to the last of this object over here. Once the whole information is available, it will be storing inside my LST branches. Now I want to show this information inside my page block table. Now let's go to that user interface. we have to represent this whole information inside your Visual Force page. Then how can we represent this is the collection name? Just you can go to that Visual Force page and then you can able to represent the content also over here. I want to represent by using the page block table. Page block table, value equals to, I'm indicating this collection name, LST branches, var equals to br, you can give any name, apex, column, value equals to br dot, what are the elements are available here? I would like to collect this elements. Name, I would like to collect the name of that branch. Like this, you can represent. Each and every element. Branch type I want to show. Delivery status. Circle. District. Division. Region. State. Country. These are the elements. I'm going to be representing these elements. Along with that, I want to represent this. LST branches. That size. I want to represent the collection size also inside this. So I'm collecting the whole data. That data I'm going to be representing inside this. Now I want to indicate that the column headers. Now for that one, we would like to specify header value equals to name. And the header value equals to branch type. Header value equals to delivery status. Header value equals to circle. Header value equals to district. Header value equals to division. Header value equals to region. Header value equals to state. Header value equals to country. So now I'm going to be representing this whole information inside this Visual Force page. Okay, now let's see that content over here. Let's search. I'm indicating this data 500001. Now click on search branches. Now it is collecting all the branches information. It is representing inside my page block table in the form of tabular format. So totally 5 branches are available. These are the branch details. Suppose if I'm having that 522124. When I click on search branches, it is collecting all the branches information. Totally 15 branches are available. All the branches information is populating over here. I'm collecting that like as 500038. So how many branches are available? So it is indicating 2 branches are available. These are the branches information. Like that, here we can able to integrate. So by using this HTTP class, HTTP request in HTTP response class, we can able to connect to the third-party web service, and we can able to invoke that web service by passing the values, and we can collect that response and we can represent on your Visual Force programming also. This is how we are using the HTTP classes to connect to the third-party web services, and we can able to collect the response, and we can represent on your Visual Force page. Okay. So tomorrow we'll see one more example over there, like how can we connect to that or weather map implementation. How to connect to the weather map implementation, how to collect that weather details, and how can we represent, we'll see practically in tomorrow's session.
Sir, please share this name.